So welcome along, everybody, to our online event celebrating an incredible year. So it really has been the year of the octopus, and the first time in the southwest of England that we've had such an astounding increase in the number of octopus around our waters that it's been called an octopus bloom. In previous years, we've had similar things, but the last one of this scale was actually in 1950, so nearly 75 years ago. And back then, they were referred to as plagues. But certainly this time, there's been a lot more appreciation for these incredible animals, and that's why we thought we'd hold an event tonight to talk about what it's been like, to talk a bit about octopus's biology, talk about why the bloom might have happened, and also to just to share our experiences. And I've been very lucky that I've got a lot of diving friends in Cornwall and snorkeling friends who I know through my work at the Wildlife Trust, who have allowed us to use wonderful images and videos to illustrate this natural phenomenon. So thank you to all of those. And so yeah, without further ado, I'm going to crack on with the presentation. So just before I get started on the octopus, as I already mentioned, I work at Cornwall Wildlife Trust, and in Cornwall, a project called Sea Search is actually coordinated here by the Wildlife Trust. And Sea Search is a great citizen science project. It's been running now for over 30 years. And it allows divers, snorkelers and free divers to record the wildlife and the habitats they encounter. So we train people, and if anyone's interested in getting involved, there's going to be several training courses next year. First one's going to be in March, and then we've got another one in May, and possibly a third one in June as well. So please come and get in touch if you're interested in joining with Sea Search. It's a brilliant project, and once you're trained, any dive or snorkel you do, or free dive, you can fill in one of these forms that really, and then submit it to the project, and that will really help us with our monitoring of the marine environment, looking at changes, looking at threats, and also helps us with our marine conservation work. And it's a fantastic thing to get started, because once you start really observing things a bit more closely underwater, your eyes are open to this whole world, and there's so much diversity in our waters. So you go on this journey where you're learning all about all these other incredible creatures and seaweeds, and there's a whole world out there. We've done Sea Search all around Cornwall. These are just some of the survey points, but as you can see, there are still gaps. And it's important as well to return to places that have already been surveyed to monitor change. So there's loads and loads of work for us to do. Anyway, back to the subject, octopus. What is so fascinating about octopus? Well, they've captured the imagination of people, haven't they, forever, really, for as long as we've been around. I think they're really alien creatures. That's part of the fascination, and they really do look like an animal from another planet. And we know from historic engravings like this one, this is from a church in Brittany, we know that people have been afraid of octopus and for a long time, and there's a kraken just pulling down a ship. And then in more recent years, lots of octopus creep into lots of literature, lots of stories. People just love to tell stories of octopuses. There's a book I remember from when I was a lad. Some of you might remember that one. And in those stories, the octopuses were always scary, and they would drag you into a cave and wouldn't let you out. And for a long time, humans have been very afraid of octopuses, but I think that's starting to shift. And I was brought up on books like this one, where the octopuses were an exciting character in the book. And I just think that, we are starting to change the way we think about octopuses. Now, here in Cornwall, probably some pioneers that help with that are local filmmakers, Mark Deeble and Victoria Stone, who made a brilliant film back in 1998 out in the cold waters of the North Pacific off Vancouver, where they were diving with the giant Pacific octopus. That's the largest octopus species in the world. And there's Victoria. He described that as a pretty life-changing experience when a 6-meter octopus was just giving her a hug and wrapping around her. And she said she really enjoyed it until it pulled her regulator out of her mouth, and then it was a bit more scary. I think she managed to get the regulator back in calmly before deciding that was enough of an encounter. But what an amazing animal the giant Pacific octopus is. And but then more recently, many people have been enamored by octopuses, having watched this fantastic film on Netflix called My Octopus Teacher. And in that, those of you who have seen it already will know that it's a brilliant story of this chap who is spending a lot of his time snorkeling, and he starts to form a relationship or a bond with the octopus that he encounters on every snorkel. And it's a lovely story. And certainly, if you haven't seen that, please go and watch it. I recommend it. It's a fantastic documentary. And my personal journey with octopuses, I guess, goes back to, being fascinated by them as a kid, and then whenever I've been on holiday in warm countries, I've always wanted to get a photo. And a few years ago, I got this photo of one in the Mediterranean down in Greece, in Corfu, and there's just such stunning creatures. I was really happy with that photo. And in my career, I've done a lot of different things. Some of you already know, though, that I spent a long time working in aquariums, and octopuses were always something that I really enjoyed keeping in aquariums. Obviously, they are intelligent animals, and you need to keep them entertained and stimulated. So we would kind of come up with different toys and games and things like that for the octopuses. And one thing I noticed was that octopuses definitely could learn who was who, and they had their favourite keepers. And we'll come on to that in a minute. They are intelligent, and we're learning more and more about how intelligent they are. So fascinating animals. So quickly, some amazing octopus facts. Now, if you've got the chat function, um, actually, I can't actually see what the chat here on my screen, unfortunately. But I expect you can answer some of these questions in the chat quickly. So, how many arms do they have? People know. Maybe Bex could help me by unmuting and saying what people are writing.
I will, yes.
Hopefully, most people know that they have 8 arms. Is that the trend for that answer?
I'm not seeing any replies to that one for some reason.
Oh well,
Maybe a
most people
more
don't.
challenging question. Oh, there they
A
come.
lot. Okay, so how many
In.
hearts have they got? Quickly, if you're on the chat, just quickly type in how many hearts do you think an
Getting
octopus has?
three seems to be the consensus on that one.
What are they saying?
Three.
3. That is correct. Yeah. So octopuses have this a different sort of system to us. In fact, their blood. So coming on to the next question, their blood. What color is that? Any answers?
Oh, we're getting some blues coming through.
Yeah, well done. Yeah, octopuses have got a different oxygen carrying molecule to us. So we have hemoglobin, which is obviously what gives blood that red colour, but they have hemocyanin, which actually gives the blood a sort of a pale bluish sort of tone. And it's not as good at carrying oxygen, so they have to pump the blood around much more, which is why they're coming back to the hearts. They have one heart for each of their gills, and then they have a heart for the rest of their body and brain. So, that's the reason they have 3 hearts. How many brains do they have? This is a good one. Anyone coming up with an answer on that one, Bex? It's
The
always.
consensus is 9.
Wow, we've got some octopus experts here tonight. That's great.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so the brain, the fact is, yeah, they've got this incredible brain. It's shaped like a donut and it's highly folded. Quite, something that shows that it's quite a well-developed brain. But the reason it's shaped like a donut is because it's arranged around the mouth, the esophagus, effectively. So if an octopus eats something, it has to pass the food through the center, through the esophagus, and that, in effect, is going through the brain, through the center of this donut-shaped brain. And then attached around the mouth, you have the body of the octopus is arranged radially, so you have 8 arms radiating away from the mouth, and each arm, it turns out, actually does a bit of thinking for itself. And some horrible experiments were done a long time ago that sort of proved this, but it makes sense, doesn't it? When you've got 8 arms, letting them have a bit of autonomy means that they can feel and they can taste with their sensory suckers and pass information back up to the centralized brain. So that is the correct answer. They have 8 in their legs and then 1 central brain, so a total of 9. And then the last question: Did anyone bravely write an answer for how many suckers does an octopus have? Just out of interest. No, I can't hear you, Bex.
I'm on mute.
Yeah,
We've got
yeah,
160, a few hundred, depends on the species, 200, 200
yeah. Well
variable.
done. So whoever wrote depends on the species is spot on. The other thing is octopuses can drop arms. So if they're attacked by a predator, that's one of their defense mechanisms. Crabs do that too, don't they? But you often see an octopus missing a limb. So obviously the number of suckers varies, but they can have up to 200, a common octopus, on each arm. And imagine trying to coordinate that many that many suckers. It would be pretty crazy. But yeah, that was a bit of a trick question. So octopuses, how have they evolved? So they are in the phylum Mollusca. So the phylum is a large group of animals that includes snails, slugs, and the bivalves, things like mussels and scallops. And so that's a very, very large group of organisms, and most of them aren't very intelligent. But the top of the class, the cephalopods, have become extremely good predators, and they are now, without a doubt, the most intelligent of all the mollusks. So the first cephalopods, cephale meaning head, poda meaning foot, evolved about 500 million years ago, and we know from the fossil record that there are lots of um, ammonites and belemnites and other snail-like cephalopods which developed the ability to float up off the seabed and go hunting for food, which was a real evolutionary advantage. So they ruled the oceans for millions of years. Nowadays, we only have one living ancestor of those, the nautilus, which lived deep down in the tropics and are fascinating animals. And then as evolution progressed, eventually the cephalopod's shell became internal. So here we have the cuttlefish, and you'll all be familiar with the cuttlebone. That's actually an internalized shell that it uses for flotation. And as evolution continued, eventually they lost that, becoming the squid. So the squid have a very similar sort of body shape, but in the internal shell is missing, except for that shiny layer that you get on the top of a seashell that you'll be familiar with. That essentially is all that's left, giving them a plasticky pen for structural support down their back. And then finally, we end up with the most advanced in the group, the octopus, who lost their shell altogether, and now they just have these 8 limbs and the suckers and this sort of bag-like mantle, which we always used to think was its nose in cartoons, didn't you? But that's actually the body, really. It's like a big muscular sac with organs hanging down into it, such as the gills and the reproductive organs, etc., are found inside there, and the gut exits into the mantle. So they're amazing, very, very advanced creatures. And thank you to Dana, by the way, for these lovely illustrations from her book, The Lives of Octopus and Their Relatives, Princeton University Press. So, which octopus species do we have here in the southwest of England? Well, we've got 2, and this is the smaller of the 2. And before this year, this is the one you'd be most likely to see if you're out diving or snorkeling off Cornwall. Actually, more likely a bit deeper diving depths. And it's quite small. It only grows to about the size of a football. This is the curled octopus, Elodone serosa. It has quite short arms in relation to its body, and it can vary a lot in colour. Obviously, they can change colour, but it can go quite spiky. It can have little horns on the top of the eyes sometimes. But the key diagnostic feature is actually by looking at the arms. So under the arms, they have a single row of suckers, and you can see on this photo taken by John Rundle at the MBA, the Marine Biology Association in Plymouth. You can actually see on some of the arms, the suckers are sort of going side to side like a bit of a zigzag, which makes it a bit harder. But the third arm along, if you started where it says John Rundle and count 1, 2, 3 to the left, that one there, you can see the row of suckers is nice and straight there. So that shows you it really does have just one row of suckers, and that's the best way of telling them apart. Okay, so the other species that we find in our waters, and this is the one that's bloomed this year, is Octopus vulgaris, the common octopus, also known as the Mediterranean octopus. Now, it's not only found in the Mediterranean, it is an Atlantic species as well. And in fact, around the world, there's quite a few different places where we find Octopus vulgaris, and there's interesting DNA work going on looking at how how closely related or separate they may be. We might find that splits a bit more in the future. But anyway, the difference with these guys is they're much bigger. They can get up to 1.5 meters. They've got much longer arms in relation to their body. They're quite sort of lumpy in appearance often, I find, and really impressive, beautiful animals. And here's a couple of photos. Both of these are by Shannon Moran, one of our volunteers. She's fantastic. But on this one, you can really see it's holding up that piece of kelp in the photo. You can see it's got 2 rows of suckers. So quite different, and that's the diagnostic difference between the 2 species. In this photo, you can see the octopus stretching out its body like a big parachute, and this is like a web that it uses to parachute down onto its prey. And again, in that photo, you can really see the rows of suckers. So this year we've had this incredible population increase, but it has happened before. And if you look back in the Marine Biology Association journal, you'll find really interesting reports. This one's by Walter Garstang. You can find it online, The Plague of Octopus on the South Coast and its effect on the crab and lobster fisheries. And in here he's talking about 1899 in the spring. Common octopuses started showing up all around, and into 1900 as well, there were large numbers of common octopuses. In fact, it really caused concern amongst fishermen. Back then, there wasn't really a market for octopus. And then we didn't have another big population explosion until, well, there was a minor one in 1930, but there's less written about that one. But then we had a really full-blown one in 1950, and again, that was written about in the Journal of Marine Biology, and by Rees and Lumby. They're not calling it a plague in this one, but it did feel quite negative if you read it, the way they were sort of talking about the octopus. So then we didn't have another population explosion until 2022, where we started seeing quite large numbers of octopus being caught by fishermen around Falmouth area. But and we saw a few diving, and a few of those photos I just showed you were taken then. But that was nothing in comparison to 2025, which has just been, a huge increase in octopuses. This is probably my favourite picture of the octopus bloom taken at Porthkerris by Kirsty Andrews. So thank you, Kirsty, for letting us use this. And it's just such an incredible photo. It's showing an octopus just about to jet away from the photographer. It almost looks like it's dancing. And our volunteers have been spotting a lot. So here's a graph of octopus records in Cornish waters, showing that we've had 1 or 2 per year and a lot of years with no records at all. 2022, there was an increase. But in 2025, we've had over 70 records, nearly 80 records, and that's really the tip of the iceberg. I think we get loads more are out there. It's just our dedicated volunteers who are actually filling in reports. And what's really interesting there is you can see the orange section there shows that more than half of the records were taken by snorkelers. And what we found was the fisherman was saying there was lots more octopus offshore, but because of that sort of huge population, they were spreading right in much closer than we've seen them in previous years. So a bit more about the biology of octopus and the way they swim. The mantle relaxes and expands. That draws water in through a gap either side of the head. Obviously, this is a squid, but it's the same in an octopus. And then when the muscles contract, they blow water out through a directional pipe called the siphon that they can then they can blow water out gently just to blow sand or seaweed away. It's quite interesting. But if they want to swim away, they can literally jet propel. And here we're going to see a little video, hopefully it plays nicely, taken by one of our brilliant volunteers, Heather Hamilton, at Cornwall Underwater on Instagram. She's got a great Instagram account. And what a beautiful encounter. This octopus is just jetting along, and then it decides it's going to stop and have a look at these snorkelers. So it's there in the kelp looking beautiful. Amazing. And then we've had some other really cool ones. So as well as jet propulsion, an octopus can also move a bit more slowly if it feels like just sort of leisurely cruising along. And this video captured by Jenny Kent was absolutely brilliant. This is in in St Austell Bay, not far from here, and you can see it walking, literally walking, using two of its arms like legs. And I think that is absolutely brilliant. So yeah, fascinating the way they move. So coming on now to their senses, octopuses have really well developed senses. And this is a great example. This lovely illustration here from Dana's book shows you how similar the octopus eye is to a human eye. Despite the fact that we've evolved completely separately, with millions of years apart, the octopuses have ended up with a very similar structure to us that helps them see. In fact, however, I should point out the octopus eye is better. It doesn't have a blind spot, and that's because its photoreceptors are arranged in a much better way with the nerves coming out from behind them instead of coming out from the front. Something fascinating about octopuses is that they can't see colour, so they actually see the world in black and white, but they can pick up on polarized light. And as you go deeper down, you lose reds, don't you? Reds and yellows go very quickly, but and everything appears all blue and kind of dull. But polarized light actually travels far deeper, and it allows octopuses to really see around themselves. Now, the next video was taken by Paul Naylor, who is a fantastic underwater photographer, and he spent a lot of time this summer down on the lizard as well. So he was filming a group of octopuses. I think it was his last dive of the day. He came across this big group of octopuses. They'd been watching octopuses all day, but these ones started really interacting, which is fascinating. And I love the way with an octopus, it has these eyes on the top of its body, and look, it can stretch its body right up to bring those eyes as high as possible. And we coined the term periscoping for this, which I think is pretty apt. And you can really tell that these octopuses are looking at each other. They're potentially communicating. And here's one moving up towards another one, which has gone quite a dark colour. Now this was July, so this was kind of, or I think June, sorry, this was breeding season. And these octopuses are either trying to find a mate or maybe scare away competition. It's hard to tell, but absolutely stunning. Almost like like a big wigwam, that one at the front, isn't it? And he was, absolutely blown away, Paul, and it's a fantastic video that we're very grateful he shared with us. You can see the brown one is sort of skulking off, and the other guys are all sort of squaring up to him or her. Now, you might have noticed that in there that they were different colours, because octopuses can change colour, as most of you know, and all the cephalopods can do this. They have these chromatophores, which are pigment-filled sacs inside the skin, and they're surrounded by muscles, circular muscles, that when they contract, they stretch that pigment sac bigger. And with thousands of these, a bit up to 230 of them per millimetre, it has the effect, a bit like the pixels on a TV, meaning they can change colour instantly, and they've got lots of different coloured chromatophores within the skin. And yeah, it's incredible what they can do. Here's an octopus that's gone really pale, lovely photo by John Blackwell. Yeah, and here's one that's gone darker. Now, what they can also do is in their skin, they have rings of muscle that when they contract, they actually form a wrinkle that sort of sticks up like a spike. And you can see here a really spiny sort of rough sort of body surface is created, and that really aids them with camouflage as well. Okay, so now moving on to their senses in terms of their arms. They've obviously got these arms that are equipped with hundreds of suction cups. And these suction cups are really advanced, really sensory. So they're feeling, but they're also covered in taste buds. So they're tasting using those suction cups. And they're using them to explore the environment. And also to grasp onto things. And in this diagram here, you can see how it works. So they have two sections, a big sort of round section at the top called the acetabulum, which is very muscular. And when the lower section, which is soft and flexible and pliable, forms a seal onto something, it will stick onto even quite rough surfaces. It then contracts those muscles, that enlarges that void in the center, creating a vacuum, and that's how they grasp onto things. And it's amazing that they can control them all separately. Now, I remember when I was working in the aquarium, when you were playing with an octopus, it would often wrap one, two, maybe three arms, tentacles around you, and the suckers would be very, very strong. I always told the staff, don't let them get more than three on you. You might get pulled into the tank. But literally, I remember playing with a giant Pacific octopus and lifting it right out of the water, letting the kids touch it, and then putting it back in. And then you come away with all these bright red love bites all up your arms from that suction created by those suction cups. Absolutely amazing. And there you go, close up view. You can see the hole in the centre of the suction cups. And yeah, it's this is a lovely little film taken by Matthew Bradshaw. He was out snorkeling off Looe, so the octopus bloom extended right the way up the coast. There were large numbers off Devon as well, South Devon, and this is a view of yeah, basically what a crab would see, and the mouth in the centre there. So yeah, there's so many suction cups. You're basically, if you are a crustacean trying to escape or fight back or pinch, you get immobilised by all those suckers grasping onto you. And there you go. That's a brilliant film. I think you're going to see another one a bit like this from Dave. It's quite amazing. If an octopus doesn't want to give you your camera back, you're pretty scuppered. So yeah, right at the centre then, as those suction cups are passing the food up to the centre, they eventually reach the mouth. And what they have, the only hard part in an octopus's body is this parrot-like beak, wrapped with a huge, sort of almost like the size of a tangerine in the case of a common octopus, the amount of muscle wrapped around the two parts of the beak. And that is really powerful. And as you can see, very pointy and sharp. So they can make a small hole through a crab shell very easily, and then they'll squirt in venomous saliva. And all octopuses are venomous. Fortunately, our local species aren't too bad to humans. We don't have any really, really bad ones. The worst one, the famous one, is the blue ring octopus in Australia, which paralyses you and can kill. But luckily, our local ones aren't as bad to humans. But yeah, if you're a crab, you're killed pretty rapidly and humanely. And then they continue to pump in saliva that's full of enzymes, and they'll basically just suck out the meat. And that's why when you're out diving, you often find empty shells around the lair of an octopus that are just discarded and often quite intact. So yeah, they also though have another method of getting into their prey. And can you see the raspy tongue there? That's the radula. It's similar to the radula found on a limpet or a snail, but it can use that in the case of a very tough shell. So something we've noticed in this summer is a lot of octopuses flattening themselves down on the seabed and creating a bit of a depression in the seabed. And around them, we found a large number of empty shells. So these pictures by Alex Gibson were really telling. The octopus, you can see all the sediment there being stirred up, and the octopus was digging down with one of its arms into the sediment, probably following the bivalve, the siphons from the bivalves down below, and then just literally pulling up clams. Here's an otter clam, otter shell, and then they would use that radula because that's a really hard shell to break. They wouldn't be able to break it with their beak, but they could grind a hole in it big enough to then squirt in the toxic saliva and the enzymes. So yeah, amazing. So it seems that Porthkerris has been a bit of a hotspot for octopuses doing that behaviour where they dig into the seabed, and we've certainly seen a lot of empty shells down there. And something that we'll talk about in a minute as well is they're also taking out scallops, and this is having an impact, we think, on populations of commercially harvested scallops. Okay, so another little video to show you now. This is absolutely amazing. So those suction cups will only work if they're very supple. And so they shed their skin on each of their suction cups periodically. And this behaviour is only rarely seen in the wild. It was taken by Mike Etheridge, who does a huge amount of diving in Falmouth Bay. And I love the way, as he jets off, this octopus leaves some of that skin, some of the slime off those suckers are left there behind him. Absolutely amazing. So that's why the suckers are always sticky. Okay, so nearly there, guys. We've got a couple more slides, but their life cycle is quite incredible. They literally live fast, die young. Now, if you imagine an octopus, it has no bones, no skeleton. Forming a skeleton is actually really energy energy thirsty. So an animal that doesn't have a skeleton, that just has to build up muscle, has a real advantage. It can grow extremely quickly. So probably for that reason, octopuses complete their life cycle in very short time, relatively 1 or 2 years. And they'll only mate once, so a mature male will pass sperm in a long tube, like called a I've forgotten the name of it. Anyway, they pass the sperm to the female, and the female, using a specially modified arm with a groove down it, and the female will store that sperm package until she's ready to use it. She then will find a nice cave or a sheltered spot, a crevice, where she will then sort of clear a surface on the rock and lay eggs, normally on the top of the cave, in little chains, and she'll lay thousands of eggs. And then she will not leave those eggs. She'll basically stay with them, blowing seawater onto them gently just to aerate them. And she'll stop feeding and she'll dedicate the rest of her life to the eggs. The eggs will then hatch a few weeks later, and the little tiny larvae drift away. And it's a bit like that film Charlotte's Web, when all the spiders drift off in the wind. Well, these little tiny paralarvae drift away in the ocean's currents, and they just have to fend for themselves. The poor mother is pretty exhausted, and her life will end very shortly after. But yeah, the male octopuses also have quite a short life. By the time the breeding season ends, they're normally pretty beaten up. They've had plenty of fights with other males and run-ins with each other. Often they're missing limbs, and their senescence sort of means that they naturally die off after they've had their main breeding season, after when they're fully mature, which is normally after 1.5 or 2 years. Anyway, the little paralarvae will drift for several weeks in the oceanic currents, eventually settling as juveniles. So the juveniles are only a few millimeters long, but they then behaving just like the adults. They're feeding on crustaceans and on mollusks and putting on muscle rapidly. So yeah, they literally live fast, die young. And this year, my friend Lewis, who I dive with a lot, he's a fantastic videographer, actually captured what we think could be octopuses mating, although it is quite hard because with all the arms it's really hard to see what's actually going on. But that was a fantastic bit of footage, bit of piggybacking going on there. And later in the year, lots of people were reporting octopuses guarding their eggs. And here's one guarding well, in a lair. I didn't actually get a shot of the eggs. We might see some in Dave's presentation, but you can see quite a lot of empty shells there. So that's maybe one of the ones that's been feasting on clams. So yeah, we started getting a lot of reports in from fishermen about the same time as we started receiving reports from divers, and fishermen were seeing large numbers of octopus this year, mainly in crab and lobster pots. And here's a photo I took on a dive where you can see 2 octopuses in there. They found some food, so there's an empty lobster shell at the bottom there, and there was actually a live lobster in there that was going to probably be eaten next. But octopuses naturally like pots and they feel safe in there. So what would often happen is they'd go into a crab pot, they'd eat the lobsters, and then they just sit there and think that, this is a great cave. But obviously the fishermen will pull them up shortly after. And catches of lobsters really went through the roof. I had a friend, he's a fisherman in Myla in Falmouth. He told me that if you had 100 crab pots this summer, you could expect to be landing 3 tons of octopus every week for quite a few months during the summer. And here's some data from the Marine Management Organisation showing octopus landings each month. And the graph shows you as well multiple years. So you can see that the pale blue is 2025. So in January and February, the numbers of octopuses being caught weren't all that many. But then in March, April, May, by May, it got massive, the amount being landed. They were landing, 400 tons were landed in May into UK ports. So there was a real increase, and it dropped off then again in August. But absolutely so much more than would normally happen. that we normally see. And it wasn't just crabbers as well; they're also being caught in trawl nets. So, what impacts has it had? Well, again, from MMO, this shows you the average landings of several species of shellfish, including crustaceans and mollusks. So, CIE means crabs. So, in 2025, we had almost half the number of crabs landed. The next one, crawfish. It's quite hard to see a trend in that. The lobsters, there was a decrease in 2025 compared to the average of the last few years. But this one, the next one, scallops, is quite astounding. Scallops are very important for the Cornish fishing industry, and the landings of those halved. And as you can see, it was a real big difference. And then finally whelks as well. So yeah, they've been having an impact on several different commercial species, and for this reason, fishermen were very worried, and rightly so. And if you were a lobster fisherman, it meant that none of your customers would be happy because you rely on supplying your regular customers lobsters, and instead you're catching a lot of octopus. But on the plus side, fortunately, octopus now there is an international market for them. So the fishermen were able to sell them. They freeze very well and they travel well. So the prices of octopus is pretty high constantly. So and it dropped a bit, I think, because of the amount of supply. But it still made the fishermen quite a good living this year. But the worry is what impact will happen in future years when the octopuses are gone? Will there then be nothing left for them to catch? Because we think that in previous cases, these blooms have only lasted 1 or 2 years. So yeah, why have we had an octopus bloom? This is quite a big question and quite hard to answer. But you often hear people saying it's climate change is why we've had a bloom. Well, we did witness that there had been warm conditions when the previous blooms happened. So with warming seas, it could happen more frequently potentially, but there are lots and lots of factors. So firstly, you have to have a lot of eggs, and we knew there'd been quite a good population over on the coast of Brittany the last few years. So possibly quite a few eggs were laid then. The temperatures have an influence as well, as I said. Availability of food is quite important. So when the larvae are drifting around, they've got to have the right sort of plankton to feed on. And then as they grow, they need, they need to have lots of food to allow them to grow. And the quality of the food makes a big difference as well. And then finally, predation. So in previous years, when we had large numbers of cod off Cornish coasts, we would have found that cod would really love small octopuses. So it's possible that by removing predatory fish, benthic predators, you make it easier for octopus to survive. And it could be that we've changed ecosystems, and that could be contributing to the success of octopus at the moment. And then finally, there's unpredictable things like storms, oceanic currents. So it is one hypothesis is that a large number of larvae might have been taken north by the Reynolds Current, which brings water up from Ushant off the coast of Brittany. So that's one theory, and that might be why how they arrived. Equally, you can get a large population explosion, and then octopuses will disperse themselves by walking over the seabed, which is another theory. So will we get another bloom? Well, that's a brilliant question. And a big research project is being undertaken by scientists at the Marine Biological Association who have spoken to divers and to fishermen and carried out a load of work. This is actually out of date. You can't get onto the questionnaire anymore because it's all being written up at the moment. But so we will be hearing very soon some results from their research, and I'm eagerly awaiting that. So yeah, watch that space. So anyway, thank you very much for listening to me, and I should just thank all of those brilliant volunteers who have helped by sending in their records and letting me use their pictures and videos. Thanks so much to you all. You know who you are. And also thank you to our brilliant volunteers and our Your Shore network all around the coast of Cornwall. We have local marine groups who are supported by Cornwall Wildlife Trust. You do brilliant work. So if you aren't already involved in a local marine conservation group and you'd like to, please reach out, and we'd love to put you in touch with people who really care about the sea locally. If you're interested in learning more about seafood and its sustainability, We also run the Cornwall Good Seafood Guide, which is a brilliant online resource. So we keep that up to date with information on what's happening out at sea and which species you should be eating or not eating. And one last thing, it's only £3 a month, and if you're not a member already, I highly recommend it. I would say that I'm biased, but I highly recommend everyone becomes a member of Cornwall Wildlife Trust, and that will allow you to keep up to date with what we're up to, and your funds will help support our work. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Okay, we've got Bex. We're going to hand over. Thanks, guys. We're going to hand over now to a great friend of mine, Dave Roberts from Porthkerris Dive Centre.
Hi, everyone.
Dave, I'm just going to let you. You're going to share us some of your amazing stories and experiences. So, do you want to tell us? I'll just hand over to you, and you can introduce yourself because, like some people in the audience might not have been down to your neck of the woods. So, tell us a bit more about where you work, please, Dave.
Yeah, thank you very much, Matt. Fantastic talk again. Loved it. I learned so much from you because of the science involved. But I'm basically I've been an instructor down at in the southwest, on the Lizard Peninsula for nearly 30 years now, teaching diving, and I'm lucky enough to work, full time in the industry. So, I usually do about 350, maybe 400 dives a year. So I'm able to spend the time with them. And what I'm going to show you today is basically videos that I've done on my GoPro. So some of the quality is, it's GoPro quality, not pro quality, like some of the stuff you may have seen earlier from Lewis, for instance. But I think you'll enjoy it. And so if you're happy and I press the right button, I'll start the videos. All right, here we go. All right, lovely. So early on in the year, when we started seeing them, and this is probably April time, they were quite hard to see. Yeah.
You just need to share your screen for us before you play the video.
Oh, okay. How do I do that?
So if you press the green share button at the bottom of your Zoom screen.
Hang on. Just have to go back to that. Yeah.
And then make sure your video is optimized. And then click share screen.
Yeah. Share Zoom windows, yeah.
Share screen.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, there we go. How's that?
Okay, and then bring your video up.
Sorry, I'm rubbish at this, aren't I?
No, it's all good.
How's that?
Yeah, perfect.
Lovely. Sorry about that, everyone. Not my forte. Okay, is that working?
Yeah,
is
working
that okay,
fine.
everyone?
All good.
Yeah, lovely. So early on in the year, sort of April time, we were seeing ones like this one here. I don't know if you can see that. I'll just pause that. This is very, very shallow. So maybe in a metre of water, and we could see them hiding in amongst the pebbles and stuff like this. And so we were thinking, and, again, this is going to be a good year. Are we going to start to see loads and loads? So what we found is that early on in the season, there were so many in the shallows. It was just quite weird. And then we started to see them in the deeper water, which you'll see in a minute. So beautiful one here, stuck amongst the kelp. And Matt was talking to you earlier about their camouflage, but absolutely fantastic. And they just not bothered about us at all. I'll just pause on that picture. This is a picture taken by a friend of mine, Sophie, and I think it's a fantastic image of the eye there. You can really see what's going on there, and they're so knowing when you're with them. It's it's wonderful. So they seem to love this. Is one of the more invasive weeds we have here. This sargassum, but they seem to love like hiding in amongst it. And Matt mentioned earlier about how they're able to get their eyes to the highest point, but they were, we were really pleased early on that they just loved us really. and they were not bothered about us being there at all. There's another one of Sophie's pictures there. So it's this is one of my favourite videos. We noticed a lot of them were just right out in the open, slightly deeper water, about 12 meters, just pretending to be rocks, and then you just see them glide away. And I just love this. It's just fantastic. It's such a beautiful creature. Yeah, you can really see there how they raise up their eyes to the highest point of the body. This is another one just crawling along the bottom. Again, it's amazing, and the size of them was spectacular. Some were well over a meter across. Yeah, you can really see the two lines there showing it's a common octopus on the thing. What we notice, this is interesting. There's a lot of people say to us that when they go white, they're scared, and there's a lot written about this. But what we found is we were seeing them from maybe 10 meters away, 15 meters away sometimes when it was really clear, and they would actually be white, and we were just wondering why that should be, because it's the most conspicuous sort of color they can be in the ocean. But yeah, they absolutely incredible, and just not worried about us at all, really. We always keep our distance, and that's something we taught to all our divers, to sort of make sure they stayed back and give them lots and lots of space. But we did find that they started to develop a real bond with us, which I'll show you later on. We actually had a couple of octopus that would actually come up to us, if we stayed still and wrap round us and stuff. But I just love the way they're able to hide there. Again, the camouflage is amazing, because it looks really obvious in the picture there, but when you're diving, sometimes I'm sure we were swimming over multiple octopus without even realizing what was going on. So when this one moved out of the way, we actually noticed it had a number of it'd basically been eating a spider crab underneath it, and we saw quite a few instances of where they were eating a spider crab. That's another. These still pictures are all Sophie, who is a dive master down at Porthkerris. So this is a really interesting one. We were just filming this particular one, which we think is probably a female, but we're not 100% sure. And then what happens is another octopus comes in, and again, we're not sure. Is it trying to mate? Is it trying to push it away? Are they fighting? But we think it's the female on the right, the male on the left. And I think that the female on the right is almost saying, just go away, I'm not interested. That's what it looks like to us. But again, fantastic. I love the shapes of this one. This is an interesting one. This is probably a male that's been fighting, as you can see one of its tentacles is actually missing there. So, and we saw this one on multiple days actually. So again, a lovely shot of the eye there, and you can see the siphon they use at the bottom of that picture. So you can see that this is one actually eating a spider crab. I just love the fact it just didn't move at all. It's just saying, this is my crab, no one else is having it. And this is another one. The only reason we saw this was we saw the white from distance, so this is another shot of that, what we think is the male just moving away from the female there. So, and then she just blends in again. So that's another lovely coloration on that one. It's spectacular. This is an interesting one. This actually used me as cover. I'm floating above this, and there are some other divers just in front of it, and it came right underneath me. I'm probably a couple of meters off the bottom there, spread itself out, and just found its way against the wall there. So you can see to the left, just behind it there, is a cave which later on in the season, either this one or another one actually laid eggs in. And I'll show you some pictures of that later. But yeah, no, they're amazing. Just so flexible. It's another beautiful picture that Sophie took there. So This is an interesting one. I was filming this one, and I was just pretty much lying on the bottom, and it just got closer and closer towards me. And I know you saw some footage earlier of someone's GoPro being enveloped by it, and the same thing happened to me. And it's actually the GoPro is actually on a 1.5 meter pole, so I'm way away. But this would be the last horrible image if you're a fish or a crab or something being eaten by it. But I think it's amazing. It uses multiple suckers as if it's trying to really work out what on earth it's got in its mouth there or in its body. And after a few seconds, it just released me and then just happily went on its way. I think the thing is, if you're ever diving like that and one does come up to you, just stay still and don't react. This is the one that I was talking about earlier, and those of you that are divers, you can see the yellow pipe there is what we actually call an octopus. It's our spare regulator, and this particular octopus on multiple dives seemed to take a real liking to Sophie, who was seeing this picture, and it actually, by her staying still there, it just wrapped itself around her. And this, I obviously not going to show it all to you now, but it went on for 5, maybe 6 minutes, something like that. And it was quite an emotional moment for Sophie, I know, and quite amazing to watch, because it really did seem to use her as a sort of, mother figure almost. That's another really good one, showing the double row of the suckers there, which Matt was talking about earlier. And it's fascinating, really, that the way they're able to just hide in amongst anything, really. This is another one here going into that hole which I mentioned earlier. So yeah, I think that the thing this year that was amazing was the sheer numbers of them, but the fact that they were in every depth of water as well, and they really did approach us, and they're incredible. I love this picture. This is very special, very alien looking there. So this is one going into its little hideaway. I think that the really important thing, I mean, I'm not saying you can talk to octopus and stuff, but I think the thing for any divers or snorkelers, if one goes into a hole, then I personally like to almost immediately leave that situation, and I feel like they then feel they've won. They've hidden from us, and they've hidden, done it successfully. And there were a couple of times down there where we had people in there, and we had to sort of say, look, come on guys, let's get out of here and let's leave it, because they were, I'm not saying they were chasing them, but I understand people want to get nice photographs, but you got to realize they're in their space and let them have their space and their freedom. It's this one here is actually on eggs, although I don't think you can see the eggs in this particular picture, but this one here is an interesting it's a lovely image. But so over the space of about 6 weeks, this was actually on one of the mooring buoys at Porthkerris, where they keep the big boats on. And myself and Sophie had gone down to just check the moorings, and we spotted this one. And Sophie went back on multiple days and over about a 6-week period, and actually was able to film the larva growing on this. And she hasn't this was actually put together, this presentation, before they hatched, but she has actually got footage of them as they're pretty much about to emerge from the egg case there. So we're very lucky, really, that this year we had the BBC down on a number of occasions. That's actually Steve Backshall doing some filming for Deadly 60, and that episode will be out next September. But they had some fantastic photographers with them, and they used us as guides, and we were able to take them in. And yeah, I think their footage will be absolutely incredible. They're very highly skilled, photographers. This particular videographer had filmed the last Blue Planet series and the one before, and they will get some great images. And we're also on the one show, which was more a sort of a fun sort of image, really. Yeah, this is a little outtake from it, but we did some fantastic filming. I know my friend Lewis, who I think he's watching tonight, he was heavily involved in filming with that, and with the lady called Lizzie on the right there, who's a zoologist and did some studying. But I'm not sure if this one potentially is the one of the, is one of the smaller ones, one of the Elidome ones. But we were lucky enough to be able to get them some what they wanted. So I won't talk too much about what the BBC did, but they wanted an octopus in the open, and it took about, it was 2.5 days of filming, and eventually we found this particular one in the open, and she was able to do a piece to camera between it, so it all worked out well in the end. But it's fantastic for Cornwall and for everyone in the country to see what wonderful creatures we got on our doorstep here, and that's just a view of Porthkerris there. So let me just pause that. So so I hope that is of interest to people, and let me just get out of that.
Absolutely fantastic videos.
Okay, really, it's wonderful. I mean, what a thrill for us, in all the years I've been diving. The best diving, I would say, has been this year, and I've dived all over the world, and literally just in Falmouth Bay there, in relatively shallow water. We're surrounded by that, and everyone's been able to see it. I know you mentioned earlier about the number of reports from snorkelers, and that's fantastic. We've had young kiddies going in with their mum and dad who are divers and stuff, and 6 and 7-year-olds coming back and saying, I've just seen an octopus. And what an amazing thing that is for the future, for their interest. And they're going to go back to school at the end of the summer holidays and say, oh, I saw an octopus, and probably got it on their video, on their GoPro. So yeah, fantastic. So
amazing. Lovely. And it's a lovely setup. Anyone who hasn't been down there, I mean, Porthkerris it sort of faces to the east, doesn't it? So you're sheltered from all the westerly gales, but you're right on the edge of Falmouth Bay with a beautiful big reef called the Manacles Reef, with lots of rocks sticking up, and the water drops quite deep. So just off a shore dive, you can get down to nearly 20 meters, can't you, Dave?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's one of the best dive spots.
We've got a huge range of substrates, really. We start off on that pebbly sort of beach, and then it goes sandy, and then further out to the left we can go to the sort of muddy bottom and see, which is where we were seeing you mentioned them earlier, all the is it the otter shells?
Otter shells.
Yeah, we were seeing hundreds of them, weren't we? Emptied up shells, so poor otter shells. But
I think it might have been why there was such a high number around Porthkerris, because clearly, there were so many of them doing that digging behaviour, and so there could have been loads of food. The other thing that you said interested me is that in the last few years we've had large numbers of spider crabs, haven't we, all around the Cornish coast, and big aggregations as well.
Absolutely.
And it just strikes me that warm waters are also important for spider crabs. So all those spider crabs, as they've been growing, have been food for the octopus bloom, I think.
Yeah, I forgot to mention specifically, but early on in the season I've never seen so many spider crabs and spiny lobsters and common lobsters. Again, there seem to be a huge number of them, and I know how the fishing for them has been affected throughout the season. But I think early on, if they could have grabbed them then, so to speak, they'd have had a bonanza, the fishermen. But the octopus have made their mark, I think, on that. So
I think we've got quite a few questions coming in, haven't we, Bex? Do you want to, Bex, if you want to read out a few questions, and Dave and I, happy to answer.
Been helping out a bit in the chat by answering some of them.
Brilliant.
Which is great. But there's one of the most recent ones is just from Johnny. They're saying, are there still many octopus in the water, or have they all gone, passed away after breeding and laying eggs?
Yes, there are. Yeah, there are still octopus around. I haven't been in for a week or so, but friends of mine have done, and yes, they're not in as great a number, but there are. They were still seeing two or three, sometimes three or four on a dive. So yes, they are still around, and yeah.
I think the fishermen have still been catching them. And I heard a rumor that there's quite a few small ones being caught in pots,
Okay.
which are, probably next year's ones, aren't they? They'll be breeding next year. So
I would
it
think
looks
so.
like we may have more octopuses next year. So it's time to dust off your dive kit if you haven't done
Yeah,
so
well, I
already.
think so, and I think it's what's wonderful is obviously it's fantastic seeing all the octopus, but then we've got people coming down who maybe have only ever dived abroad and thought, oh, I'll give it a go, and then they see the octopus, but also then we're able to show them everything else, aren't we? All the
Exactly, yeah. We've
other
got fantastic
magnificent creatures there. It's
fantastic marine life in Cornwall, haven't we? And it's quite
yeah,
underappreciated by the majority of people. And obviously, in the audience tonight, we've got loads of people who already know that.
I know they
but
do. Yeah,
but we're hoping to share this video and really just use it to highlight that it's incredible, isn't it? What we've got under our seas,
yeah,
like this picture behind me of a cuckoo wrasse. The colours
beautiful
of some of
picture.
our marine creatures are incredible. That was taken just near. I think that was taken off the Manacles, so not far from where you work, Dave.
Yeah,
There was Dana made an interesting point about, you're saying about the octopus appearing white. I
yes,
was
yes.
wondering if, like, she says that because it takes quite a lot of energy for them to camouflage, it may actually be because they're quite relaxed in that location and feeling safe that they don't bother, which is quite an interesting
Yeah, so when the
point of view.
muscles relax, the chromatophores shrink, don't they? I think I'm right. So that would result in them looking paler. So it's probably less energy intensive to be
It
white.
might show that they're actually not, feeling relaxed rather than frightened,
Do
which
we? I wonder if
Yeah,
Dana, who studied
yeah.
octopus all
Sorry.
over the world, might know whether that happens in other species.
That's it's such an interesting question. I actually was just while you were saying it, trying to see if I could find any cases of it. And I haven't yet been able to find it. And people who keep octopuses in captivity have observed that they'll sometimes go white and that it doesn't seem to be a fear response.
Mm.
But beyond that, I haven't yet found any studies of it. So I think this is really interesting
Mm.
because it
Yeah,
is unusual to see them be that
But
dramatic
it,
just out in the open.
It
it
sounds horrible, but
is.
when
Sorry,
they
sorry.
die, they definitely go white because
It's true.
seen that, and when the seals had come through and been eating a lot of octopus, we did find quite a few dead ones, and they're always white, aren't they, Dave? The ones
Yeah,
that have
it's
died. So
quite.
maybe
It is
it's a
interesting.
natural.
Yeah, the reason I mention it is because I posted some pictures quite early on. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago of octopus white, and there were various people coming back to me saying, "Oh, you got too close and you scared them." And then I really,
Yeah.
I just wanted them to realise that a lot of the time we would see this sort of ghostly white shape in the distance, sort of thing, almost looking like a plastic bag upside down, and then we'd get there, and there's no way that octopus has realized that we're 10 meters away and suddenly gone white. So I know for a fact that they're just not bothered really, and they whenever they do get bothered, they just go away anyway. They just skulk away, or they change color and they blend in and slide away. So it's really interesting, the white. It's and
You
quite
know,
often when they're feeding, they're white as well. We found.
right. You know that video that Paul did of them all sort of periscoping and looking at each other, checking each other out.
Yeah.
It's a bit like maybe they go pale to try and get each other's attention from from a distance or something. And I don't know. Coming up with all our theories tonight.
Yeah.
So,
I'll ask him next time I see him.
any more good questions in our
Yeah, well,
chat?
Douglas has been asking about the curled octopus. So he was
Yeah,
wondering, one, your graph which showed the catch of octopus, does that include all octopus, or was it just common octopus? That was the
I think
first.
that is Doug. I think that is all octopuses.
And then
And but the divers off Falmouth have seen a few less curled since the common octopuses have come in. So yeah, they've become a bit more rare. I think there's still a few sightings, but I haven't actually plotted sightings of curled octopus against the common octopus. But yeah,
This I was going to say,
Yeah.
sorry, Matt, to interrupt, but this time of year is really when we would normally see the curled octopus. It's
Yeah, they
quite late.
prefer cooler, don't they? Cooler conditions.
Yeah, it's sort of November, December time into January is when, we would quite often go out and think, oh, we'll hopefully see a curled octopus today, sort of thing. So
When I used to keep them in the aquarium, the curled octopus always did a lot better if they were kept cold. Whereas the Mediterranean octopus is at the furthest north of its natural range here on the coast of Cornwall. So we would keep them at sort of ambient temperature, and they seemed happier when it was a bit warmer. Yeah.
We've got
So, got another question?
a $1 million question from Maddie. How long can we expect the octopus bloom to last? Have their numbers
Well,
been decreasing?
judging by the past experience, it's normally a couple of years, but the warmth in our system is unprecedented. So I remember reading reports from the Marine Biology Association that the last few years have been the warmest ever since their records of water temperature sensing started. So that's over 120 years. And we've had several years now of record-breaking warm temperatures. So things are actually heating more than would have happened in previous blooms, which makes us a bit fearful that, well, certainly the fishermen are a bit fearful, and biologists maybe less fearful, but sort of wondering whether this bloom will stick around a bit longer. And in the Mediterranean, for example, where the temperatures are nice and warm, a lot warmer most of the year, then they're always there, aren't they? They don't boom and bust in the Med.
Justin's got a question, I think maybe for you, Dave, which is, did you see any on night dives, and was their behaviour different?
Yes, we did see a lot on night dives. We also saw a lot more cuttlefish and common squid as well on night dives. It's hard to. I would say no. Their behaviour is basically the same. They may be a little bit more actually out in the open, like the video I showed of the one that was pretending to be a rock. They're more out in the open and less hiding there. But generally, same sort of behaviour. Really, they came up to us. They were fascinated by lights and things like that as well. So if we placed a torch on the seabed, they would definitely come and look at that and find out what the hell's going on there. So yeah, very inquisitive.
Interesting. We've still got a few more. Is everybody all right for a couple more minutes?
Yeah.
So Karen's asked about, I understand the female octopus dies after nurturing her brood, so she can only mate once, but do we know, can males mate multiple times?
Oh, I think they possibly can. Am I right, Dana? I'm going
Actually,
to go to the octopus expert in the audience.
both the males and the females can mate multiple times, because females actually store sperm from their matings. So they'll actually have, like, they'll mate, and that's separate from when they actually lay eggs. So by the time they're getting around to laying eggs, they might have mated a bunch of times, and they might be doing what scientists call cryptic female choice. We don't really know how they decide between the sperm that they've collected and stored from different males what they're going to use to fertilize their eggs. And yeah, the males absolutely are also just mating with whichever females they can get interest in and get access to and not get eaten by. So it's a pretty promiscuous mating system.
That's fascinating that they've got this little collection of all these different sperm things, and somehow maybe who knows, they remember, oh, this one was from that really handsome one that I met on the last Thursday, or not. Maybe they just grab the first one that comes to them to fertilize their eggs. We don't know, but fascinating. Yeah, thank you, Dana.
Yeah, I love that
really
term
helpful.
cryptic there. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think this is just highlighting the amazingness, really, of being able to do online talks, so we can have an expert beaming in from California. That's brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, really good, really great. Thanks, Dana. That's great.
Daisy's asking, could the bloom be similar to a mast year, like we're experiencing with oak tree and other trees, where they overproduce eggs, bring population numbers up, and outcompete predation?
I think the mast year is triggered by unseasonably warm temperatures as well. Am I right? I'm not actually a terrestrial person.
Yeah. I think with the mast years is where plants overproduce fruit, isn't it? And the theory is it manipulates a number of herbivores, because they overpopulate and then crash the next year. But I guess it's similar, isn't it? Because these are boom and bust animals, really. They're designed to kind of, if the conditions are right, they can reproduce as much as possible. And obviously, in this year, the conditions have been right, and they've just
there is a higher likelihood that more will survive into next year than on a normal year, isn't there? Because there's been so many females have laid eggs successfully. But that's not to say
those survive.
It's not to say whether it could be a poor year for their survival next year. So yeah, very unpredictable.
That's what you were saying at the beginning. We don't really know. We obviously know all the different things that can affect the population, but we don't know which of those was the factor in this.
I think all the stars aligned this year for them, didn't they?
Yeah.
You know, all the different factors just came together, and it's similar to when we've had massive population explosions of jellyfish. So that's kind of why we've used the term bloom. Some people have called it a boom as well, a boom or a bloom. It's a bit more positive than plague.
We had an invasion as well. That was another one.
Yeah, invasion of the aliens is always sort of quite. I think the media came up with that one, didn't they? The one show called it.
They did,
yeah. Yeah, typical.
Yeah.
But they are really catches people's attention, I guess. Did we have a question about the North Coast?
Yes.
Someone
was saying, have we seen?
I met a fisherman the other day who has caught a few on the North Coast and is concerned that they might get a population bloom there, but there wasn't many caught there in comparison to the South Coast. So yeah, we'll see. If conditions are favourable, you could get, I suppose, a bloom on the North Coast and not the South, or we might find that we get more next year. Interestingly, they've been getting a lot more cuttlefish on the North Coast the last few years than historically they would have expected. So yeah.
That sort of seems to coincide with us seeing more Risso's dolphins around, doesn't it? So they've obviously been taking advantage of our cephalopods.
That's right.
Ed is asking about the effect on the fisheries, basically saying if the life cycle of the octopus is 1 to 2 years and they are really affecting the populations of shellfish, is this going to pose a long-term downturn in the Cornish shellfish industry?
Well, this is exactly what this research project the NBA have been doing with the fishing industry is about. I guess predation is a natural thing that takes a slice out of every population. But yeah, if you have too much of it, it depresses the population, and it can take a while to recover. It's just how long is the big question. And things like crabs and lobsters grow fairly slowly in comparison to cephalopods. So yeah, the overall population will take longer to bounce back. Will it give opportunities for other species, or have impacts that we can't predict? Maybe. Yeah, it's quite an interesting one. It's quite hard to answer.
Yeah. As Jenny says, as a snorkeler, do you think an octopus would hold me underwater? Sorry, Jenny, I've got an emoji sticker right in the way of one of the words. Would an octopus hold me underwater if it decided to interact in the same way as the one did with Sophie?
Shall I answer that?
Go for it.
I mean, no is the answer, but they are very, very strong. So that particular one that had hold of my GoPro, it was genuinely having a bit of a tug of war. If I'd let go of that, it would have shot off with the GoPro. So no, they're not. They're actually very light, really. I don't know how much one weighs on average, Matt, but even one that's a metre across is probably only 3 or 4 or 5 kilos, something like that.
Yeah, a few kilos.
Yeah. So
when I worked in the aquarium, if you had a big octopus grab your arm, I would always say don't let more than 3 tentacles get on you. But if you ever wanted one to let go, if you squeezed its arm, the suckers would let go. It can feel if you just so squeeze it a little bit, not to hurt it, but it should let go.
Okay, I remember that one.
We had one work experience person who we told to go and play with the octopus, and I think they freaked out completely, and no one knows what happened to them. They just sort of went running off out the building. I think the octopus might have scared them. I forgot to mention, but octopuses can walk out of water, and this is the stuff of legend, isn't it? There's been loads of stories told of octopuses raiding fish tanks and coming back and pretending nothing happened, and it actually happens in the wild. There's been some brilliant footage of octopuses rock pooling, looking for crabs in a pool, eating all the crabs, and going to the next pool. So that's one of the things that really I think is really fascinating. Is these creatures are kind of amphibious. They can survive out of water. They wouldn't like a hot sunny day, so they tend to do it under the cover of darkness, and they will dry out and die if they're out of water too long. But they can crawl out of water, which I think is amazing. The case of the aquarium that's really famous was Brighton Aquarium back in the 1920s. A guy documented it, but I think the story has been exaggerated and stretched quite a lot, because it's not true that it would get back in its tank and pretend nothing had happened. I think they actually found it in the fish tank where it had been eating the lumpfish. They're not. They are clever, but yeah, some of the stories that go around make them out to be, super, super intelligent, and I'm a bit skeptical about some of those stories.
They're probably the same about us.
Yeah.
Earlier on in the chat, we were talking about the fact that the eyes, as we understand about their eyes, they can potentially they can't see color, and yet they have an amazing ability to blend in with their background and adapt to the colours there. And Dana was sort of answering a bit about that. It's still one of those things that we don't, again, fully understand, about these animals. But
that is an amazing. How do they
maybe sense color in their skin, it just blows my mind. That does.
How do they do that? Yeah, it's amazing. And like polarized. If they're matching the polarized light, is the fact that they're matching the color just a happy coincidence, Dana? Do you think, could that be it?
I do think that the extent to which we think they're matching color might not be actually true, because we're or most of us are humans are very oriented to color vision. And so if we see something that's really good pattern matching, and especially underwater, where all color, like even if you're just, all you divers know this, even if you're just 10 meters down, you've already lost a lot of wavelengths. And so there's not actually as much color down there as there is on the surface, but our brains are used to seeing color and we expect to see color. And so if we see an octopus that's matching the patterns around it super well, I think in our brains, we're like, it's matching the colors. It's perfect. But it might not actually be matching the colors, because everything's in shades of blue and green down there. And I mentioned this in the chat too. They do have a layer underneath the chromatophores called leucophores that's just bouncing back the scattered light around them. That's sort of like it's sort of like putting a filter on in Photoshop or something that's just like matching what's around them. So I think there's a lot that they can do without being able to see color. But then there's also all these sort of tantalizing bits of like, but their skin is photosensitive, and so maybe there is a way that they're seeing color that doesn't have to do with their eyes. And so people are still working on it. I think it's very much an open question.
Thank you. Fascinating. Yeah,
I just saw someone wrote up about the increase in Risso's dolphins, and I would say that we saw them pretty much every other day, quite big pods of them passing very close to the reef at Porthkerris. And so for us personally, we've seen a lot more Risso's dolphins. I saw anyone that's been out on boats and things will have done as well. So,
yeah.
And do you think they're eating octopus?
Yeah, that's certainly for us. That would have been the aim would be to get a photo of them doing it, but I'm sure they are. I think just from my own reading, that seems to be one of their favourite sort of prey creatures is octopus and squid and stuff. So is that correct, Matt? Or
yeah, I've heard that. Bex is more of a cetacean person.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'm more of an invertebrate guy, but that is the case, isn't it, Bex?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, it's been a really great evening. I've actually thoroughly enjoyed it, and some of the chat as well, and the input from Dana has been brilliant. And your videos, just absolutely great, Dave. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I'm sorry about the technical problems. That's not my forte, but You're safe if you come diving with me, though. So.
It was brilliant. It was brilliant, and I hope everyone in the audience has enjoyed it. Certainly, yeah, we're really grateful to you for coming down, Dave. And
thank you very much for inviting me.
Thanks so much to everyone for turning out and for everyone who contributed, and thanks so much to the technical team as well, to Katie, to Gemma, and Bex, because it might not have been so smooth if we'd tried to use Teams.
Sorry about the last minute changes. Everyone.
Last minute, we decided to go back to Zoom. And there you go. Anyway, yeah, lovely to see you all. Hopefully, you're going to see lots of you underwater next year. Please don't forget to come on our website and sign up to our mailing list if you'd like to get involved in sea search, diving or snorkeling. It's open to everybody. And thanks so much for listening, everybody. Oh, and don't forget as well, another final plug for Dana's book, The Lives of Octopus and Their Relatives, which is a brilliant read. I turned my camera off. It's a brilliant read. I recommend it.
We can't see it, Matt.
I know, because I'll have to do that. I can't work out how to change my settings. There you go. If I just, where is it? Virtual background. There you go. There it is. The Life of Octopuses. Lovely pictures in there. Okay, thank you so much, everybody.
Right, everyone. And if anybody wants to have a link to the recording of the video, do let us know. Send us an email.
Right,
awesome.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank
you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.